Thank you. Thank you.
Um, Jake, I'll start with something just basic. How did you find this film, and how did you find these stories? Because it's not only one.
Yeah, it was it was the one-time use crematorium, and I don't remember exactly how I read it or found it, but the detail itself, I had never heard that before. And as we dug a little bit deeper, it opened up into the fact that no Ashkenazi guards were allowed in the prison. And then I dug a little bit further into that, and these things started to sort of snowball together. And I had a very fictional idea of what the story would be, and I went to Israel to research it, and we went and were able to interview some of the still living participants, and we found the story of the boy, the real David.
What was the how you're making it very fast? How long was this
Yeah, it would
process?
be
This sounds
boring
like
if I make it slow. No, so that, I mean, that first detail was the thing where I thought maybe there's something more to this. We certainly have seen documentaries and dramatized things about the kidnapping, the trial. There's some great documentaries about the trial of the man in the glass box and Haim Guri. The tale of the 81 blows. But this seemed a way to maybe capture something about the place and tell the story through people at sort of the periphery of this history, in the way that maybe you do like the Lincoln assassination. Tom and I would talk about the Lincoln assassination from the point of view of the dressers and a carriage driver, at the theater that night or something. And after that, we found the story of the boy, now an older man who very late in life asserted that he worked at the factory and contributed to building this oven, and we spoke to the other living participants who said he did not. And so we have, a couple of hours of talking to each of these people, and we just felt what an interesting way to get into this story. I personally believe him, but it doesn't matter so much. But the idea of this personal testimony that can't be corroborated in any way, when we think about it in terms of Holocaust history, we think of the Shoah Foundation, we think of the way that we interact with it, especially in a very human way. It's so through personal testimony. And so I like the idea of trying to do something about history in that way, especially when this one person's claim can't really be ratified and he's sort of pushed out and rejected. So
But this could have been just the story of the boy, and instead, part of what I find fascinating about the film is so the multiple stories and the different point of views, and sort of the sense of diaspora that's in it, and that's why these people perceive what's going on in completely different ways. Can you because you've added to other stories which are partially,
you touched on a major decision that Tom and I made, which was to not do sort of the 3-act David movie, the boy movie. There was something that felt slightly conventional about it and potentially sort of sentimental about something that we weren't necessarily telling the story of this one person. And what's kind of amazing about some of the things that we came upon is that the elements themselves are sort of inherently dramatic. You start to talk to these people and they're telling, you see, so we're going to build a culture with no cremation, tasked to build an oven. You have to rub these elements together very much to make them come alive. So, I mean, I could go on and on, but.
You chose to work with a well-known Israeli director. Why did you feel that you needed a partner in writing the script?
So when I went on the research trip, I said I had this more fictionalized version of the movie, sort of the Yannick character, the metal cutter who goes up to operate the oven at the end. And as we started finding all this stuff, there was sort of a cultural layer that I felt that I couldn't penetrate on my own. And I hadn't worked with another writer really in that way before. And I was a bit dead set on, I knew I couldn't do it. And through a series of strokes of luck, I met Tom while I was there. There was a woman helping me, a researcher, and her film professor had taught Tom. Tom is also a film professor at Sam Spiegel. And we hit it off right away. And I sort of told him the outline of the story. And he basically said, I'm in. And within a couple of months, he had come to New York, and we were able to make a script together over a couple of trips and, some video chatting and various things over time. And it was really Tom who felt the whole time quite confident that I could do it in Hebrew. And my Hebrew is not very good. I can sort of read it and type it, but I can't really speak it. And then we committed to doing it that way. And it opened up a whole other thing that felt exciting and sort of scary, I think in the good way.
And was it your idea? Was it his idea? He pushed you to do it in Hebrew?
I mean, I certainly was open to doing it, and I liked the idea of it in watching it. I was just very afraid of doing it because I didn't know if I could do it. But once we looked at the process of what it would look like, I was the only real out of control element. And I felt like this is where the movie watcher sort of comes in. We watch a lot of foreign movies. We see these things, and I think we can detect, bad acting or all the things that one would do as a director. And I also rehearse a lot. So there's a long process of rehearsal before we start filming, and a script becomes a bit programmatic in that way because we're doing it again and again. And so even if I don't know exactly what the words are, we can do it. We can get through it.
Was there any of the you film it mostly in Israel and part in Ukraine, I think. And was there any of the original location or the places where some of this happened that were still there? Or
no, and Israel, especially around Tel Aviv, so difficult to find. Period. The things you're seeing, you're right at the edge of. I mean, you can barely do half a block. Or I mean, if you've spent any time there, everything is completely gone. I mean, I think the two of our main locations are gone. The factory location, which was an old winery in Rishon LeZion, and we built that factory inside of just that fallen down building. That's all been knocked down and being turned into condos.
Why the decision of you shot the film in 16 millimeter? Why this choice?
When I was younger, I became sort of before the digital photography, it was a very noticeable thing. At least I found the vast majority of movies didn't look great, and there were these sort of smaller. You'd watch Vittorio Storaro, you see these movies, and why do those movies look so good and these other movies don't? Touched. And so I was very young. I became a bit obsessed with the technological side of movie making, and I really learned how to sort of expose and process film in the way that I liked it. So I feel very dedicated to it because I can kind of get what's in my mind on the screen with film pretty quickly. And I have fairly understanding producers, though in this case they did want to kill me a little bit because there aren't labs. It was the height of COVID, so we were shipping the film to Romania, and but it's actually quite economical.
Ship it to Romania to get it processed and then see it the dailies and
a week later. But the Romanian lab, amazing, never a problem, And so it's more about really feeling like I understand it, and I just haven't really done anything digitally, and I'm sure there's a whole world but I just feel like it would take so long to figure it out. And I just know in a way how to get it, especially in a very low budgeted picture, like something like this. The film sort of hugs all these elements, making it in this day and age, like the prison, for example. I mean, it's just some bars and wires and the film really hugs those things and makes them come together, where I find sometimes in video, the separation is kind of highlighted in a way. I know it gets better and better by the month, but I just don't know how to do it really yet.
Raise your hand if you want to ask any question. Okay, there's one there.
Yeah, total miracle. Noam. So there was a casting director that I really wanted to work with there, a woman named Giulia who's done a lot of the television shows, and she has this knack for sort of group chemistry. If you watch Shtisel or Fauda, she does all these shows, and they're very large casts. And when you see them in these big scenes together, they're just remarkable. And so I really wanted to hire, even before I got there, I said, we have to hire Giulia. I have to work with her. I have a very good feeling she'll. And so we said, if we didn't have the boy, we wouldn't really have a movie. And Noam had not done anything. And I think he had joined a theater troupe in Ranana, sort of out of town. And and we were sent, an iPhone video of him kind of doing a scene from the thing, but all of those amazing qualities you see there were he was already doing it. That sort of bright-eyed, natural thing. And he at the time spoke no English, and the man who plays the teacher, Rotem Kenan, is a very well-known actor in Israel, is also a very famous acting teacher. And so I asked Rotem if we could try to build sort of an acting department around Noam, and they worked very closely together through sort of extended audition process. And then we tried to have Rotem there as much as possible, but they had their own shorthand and sort of did it together. And I would communicate with Rotem, but I didn't say too much to Noam directly, and it worked out great. And it's something I would do again if I was working with children, I think. Yeah, he's amazing, Noam. Yeah, thank you.
This one's right there. Sir.
Thank you. Great film. Thank you very much for allowing us to see it.
Thanks.
You clearly believe the young man's story. Why do you think everyone else said that he didn't do what the film depicts he did?
I know, it's such a good question. And we asked them, we said, so-and-so says you did not work there. Why would if you did, why would you reject it? And he said, well, he was difficult and I don't, sort of a thing. And then we spoke to the other person. Why does he want to? Well, maybe he now wants to be a part of something, but he wasn't, he wasn't there. But the real David was so specific. I mean, we would ask him, what did you eat for lunch? What did you, and he would tell us the things that he would pack and his mother would pack. And then he told us every single job he had done from the factory until what he found out later after his mother died, that she had sort of paid off like a guy in the computer business to get him into computers. But we couldn't really get to the bottom of that. In the same way, we could never find out what happened to the oven. When we got to know the people at the prison service and we thought we would get to the bottom of it, we never ever found out.
But the member of the prosecution, the investigator from the prosecution team is a real.
Yes,
it's a real person.
So the character Micha in the Poland section of the movie is based on Mickey Goldman, and that whole monologue is straight from Mickey. Mickey turned 99 last Thursday, and he and I are extremely close. And his son, Ron, Ron became a producer on the movie. He would have been here with us tonight, but he has COVID. So he's, on the Upper West Side, regretting not being here. And Mickey really trusted us with doing it this way and trusted us with his story. And, and the fossil thing comes from, he's a fossil collector. And that was something we talked about. And I mean, he's the holiest person I know. He's the most amazing human being I know.
And the monologue you are referring is the conversation he has with the woman when she talks about moving on and identity, right?
That's a bit dramatized, but that's also a bit based on him and his wife Ava, not Ada, who are still together. She's still with him, and I mean, the character in our movie is that becomes very sort of Tom and I in the writing process. The things that we're talking about as friends and the concerns and the various, that character's a bit from the future. There aren't too many people. The only person who's doing that is the magazine guy. That's based on an amazing, Yuri Avneri was sort of the first real ultra left, firebrand, those kind of pictures he would get with the pornography and the thing, because that magazine really exists. We couldn't use the real name, but we changed it slightly. But they let us use all the content from inside the magazines. And he was really that voice. And those things are real. Should we hang him? That's all real. He's the only person saying, we got rid of the death penalty in 1954 for a reason. We should really stick to this. I know you at the last moment held on to it just for this eventuality. But this might be the beginning of something we want to go. And a lot of the intellectuals, Martin Buber and Gershom Scholem and Leah Goldberg, they all wrote letters to President Ben-Zvi saying, don't do it. Don't do it. We got rid of it for a reason. And that's the only one they've done this way.
Someone here. Can you hold on for the microphone because it's better. Thank you.
I agree with the high praise from earlier. Can you just talk a little bit about the distribution of this worldwide and by territory? I mean, there were a lot of logos at the beginning that
A lot of logos. I know.
suggest some
Sorry.
financing
Believe
partners.
me, I tried to get rid of a lot of the
No.
logos.
That's to be expected these days. But where and how is it being distributed in various parts of the world?
We're coming to the end of the U.S. distribution. In fact, this will probably be the last theatrical. So it opened at the end of June in New York, and then it spread kind of across the country. But, it's a very small, I mean, even though it made it to maybe 50 cities or something, it's not a very wide release. And certainly there's not a lot of, money spent on releasing a movie like this. So then it will go onto streaming on the 13th. But no, not many. I mean, probably not to your surprise, not many places buy this movie. Yeah, I mean, one would hope, but I think in the beginning, I think it may be streaming on one thing. I think it's not finished, but the rest will be sort of rentals. It'll be available for rental on anything shortly.
There was someone also. She's right there. Yeah, and then I'm coming to you. One second.
Wonderful, wonderful film. I'm curious what sparked your interest in this subject matter. And I have one other question, and that is, why were the prison guards so nice to Eichmann in the end? What was that all about? That really bothered me.
And I didn't even show the half of it. I mean,
Tell us.
The way they treated him when we talked to one of the guards, but it's also very well documented. They were just sort of there to do anything he wanted, within the boundaries of. I mean, to the point. Imagine this: the night he's executed, they allow him to drink, I think, almost an entire bottle of wine. So he goes to the gallows drunk. He eats some lamb chops and drinks. So he goes drunk. He's anesthetized. They get him up there, and he complained that the rope was scratchy. And they stopped, and they got a piece of fabric, and they cut it, and they put it between his neck and the rope. I mean, right up to the end. I mean, we've conflated a thing. During the trial, he's held in one prison, which is now called Kishon, which was actually, these guys broke out of prison a couple of years ago. But after the conviction, he was held in Ramla. And there were some Ashkenazi officers, and one did get into one day and screamed at him about his family. That apparently did happen. So we didn't do the two different, but that was sort of the mandate, was to keep him safe and keep him happy, right. And they did it right up until the end. I don't know. I only know what they tell me. Oh, yeah, sorry. The first part again, will you say it? Oh, gosh, I don't know. I mean, it's a bit, I think it's a thing finding that detail in a couple of other small things. It's more like the feeling that, like, I can stick with this for years. I'll feel the same way about this story 3 years from now when we're editing it as I'll feel about it now while I'm trying to figure out how we'll even write it. I think that's the thing, but it's not. I certainly wasn't, trying to find a movie to make in Israel or to make in Hebrew or anything like that.
How did having beside a co-writer, an Israeli co-writer, a local crew, influence you stylistically, if in any way?
Well, I had a lot. They're amazing. I really did have the best crew one could get. Yaron Sharf, who photographed, it's a great cinematographer, sort of well known. I mean, you'd know if you saw Our Boys, which was an HBO thing, he had done that and many, many other things. But I put a lot of trust in them because also doing it in Hebrew, we would have discussions and I would say, if something's not going right, if it sounds funny or it's tell me, let's stop, and so there was just it's a very supportive group, and I felt like they carried me through it, to a certain degree. It was the craziest time making it, but also the most rewarding in so many ways. I mean, it was really amazing.
This gentleman there.
So there is a important Mizrahi subplot or plots to this movie.
Oh yes,
and you're bringing it into a primarily Ashkenazi historical experience. So just curious what motivated you to do that. I mean, you have Amsalat, the prison guard, and the boy and his family are Mizrahi as well.
And specifically the character, being from Libya. Again, talking about elements that you don't have to rub together too much to make them, dramatic. Just the fact, of who the real participants are shows this sort of, vast spectrum of diversity within Jewishness kind of itself, and Israeli Jewishness specifically. The real David's family was in fact from Iraq, but the Libyan story, there are not a lot of stories about the Mizrahi experience in the Holocaust, and most of those stories come from Libya. I think it's 5,000 people, get sent to camps in Europe. Far fewer die, very few die, but it's a major part of the history that's just not very well known and not very documented. And I didn't even know all that much about it. So it was a way for us to sort of include it. The clash, that sort of culture clash, I think exists still. I mean, there, and certainly in the politics of the place. And I think that was just something that Tom and I, it's there because of who the story's about, but then we thought we could highlight it without making it maybe too didactic. But there was a way to show it. So.
Thank you. It's a very meaningful film. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm trying to just, out of curiosity more than anything, drill down on wondering how deep the research or what was fabrication or dramatization, I should say, like the idea of the secrecy or process by which the oven is actually made. Is it from the guy from the Irgun and Haganan? Did they work together? And the guy who's head of did they blow up the Hotel David? All those questions.
So
how much is fabric? How much of curious.
I mean, the story strung along a series of public facts, the trial and the dates of execution and who's around him, and those kinds of things. In terms of, I mean, I don't love movies that start with sort of based on a true story. I always find that sort of tricky, and so it's not something I put on the movie. They wanted to put on the poster, and we talked about it, and sort of like based on true events. That's true. And so there are things that are very, very specific. Like that's what Eichmann said to the guard. That's what he told us. It was like, what was hearing the verdict like drinking a glass of water. But then the things are fictionalized. The boys, moment to moment within the factory. I mean, he's not laying out every day and everything else, but his relationship with his father was like that. They did not have a good relationship, and when his father died, it wasn't fixed, and he felt like he had to be a certain way. So we're taking these elements, and they're, ultimately fictionalized because we're making up what they're saying to each other, but we're operating off of what we're being told and treating it as if it were fact. But I think that's sort of, in a way, I don't want to say the thesis of the movie, but the jumping off point is this idea that the whole story is coming from a contested history. And that was something I think Tom and I found really compelling. And, so how do you do this, this way? And by not being in those rooms, with the heights of power and all that stuff. So the real Shlomi, is based on a guy, yes, who was an Etzel and was in fact and was convicted of crimes of terror after the Munich Olympics. A couple of years later, he had caches of weapons stored all over the country, hidden. And he took it upon himself to ship hand grenades and some automatic weapons on an El Al flight in a crate to Rome. He was going to blow up the Libyan embassy, and he got caught in Israel. He was arrested in Israel. And at that point, Menachem Begin was the prime minister, his friend, and who they had served together. And he got a 1-year suspended sentence for terrorism. And then he died a year later in a car accident with his wife. But the real Shlomi is, there's a book about him. I mean, he's involved in every single major, Accra prison break, King David Hotel, he's involved in every single one. And he lived where all his friends, the pin he's wearing, there's a famous one. There was one that one of the Etzel guys the British had caught, and he wouldn't give anybody up, and they hanged him. And there was a whole thing. There's a real pin that if you go to the Etzel Museum, there's a pin of this guy Dove. I can't remember his last name, but yeah, the real Shlomi's. I mean, an unbelievable. He was apparently personally blocked by Ben Gurion for getting any commission in anything. Like, you literally go from like I don't know how much, like the Altalena, the moment there's a country's about to have civil war, and thing. And then Ben Gurion apparently said, like, the real Shlomi Zebkin will never work in this government or this army or anything. He went to work for his father in an oven factory in Petah Tikva. And then they came to him, and nothing's happening in a big office. Apparently, one of the stories with the putting together of this whole thing happened at a car rental place. And the real Yannick came for the meeting and said, "Oh yeah, we can do it. You should talk to my boss. We can put that together for you," something like that. Like all very, low key.
There.
Thank you. Your movie's very granular, and I was wondering what went behind the creative decision not to portray Eichmann's face directly on screen. I thought it was a great touch.
Oh, good. My feeling about that was, again, we've seen depictions of him and characters like this, and they always seem to. It's always a bit like overrated and underrated. A bit Hannibal Lecter, this sort of diabolical mastermind sort of. And my thing was like, even if we could psychoanalyze him, like where would that ever get us? After the millions of people murdered and all of this sort of, and I just feel like he's somebody that we're reacting to. It's more of like a situation that he creates, and not so much. There's no way to do it in a way that's interesting. I think for Tom and I, when we were writing, I wouldn't even know how to begin to try to understand him. And then even if we could understand him, what would that mean to what is actually happening? And so I felt that visually the only way to do that was to kind of, avoid it in a way.
I mean, you almost show it like a ghost, and it is very banal, to use a word, Hannah Arendt.
Right, a very overused term for
Yeah.
these subject matters.
But that's the idea of this very mundane things that it's doing. It is like a shadow.
Well, the thing we talked about a lot is, the process of doing all this with him, the guy who popularizes or, amplifies modern dehumanization, the process of guarding him, sort of preparing him for death, sort of highlights his humanness. It's like watching him breathe, like you would a baby. You have babies and you see if they're breathing and you're nervous as a new parent, and that sort of, first we see him, he's on the toilet. It's all this sort of these very human functions. And so that was something that just the process of watching him shows that he's a person that we always like to talk about, people who are capable of these things as animals and monsters. And it's like, no, they're people just like us, sort of. No, but I mean, not just like us, of course. But I mean, the carriage is like.
There is. Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. The last one right there. If you can bring the mic.
Just to be redundant, the movie was wonderful, so powerful. But I just wanted to comment on the shots where the camera focuses on the eyes of the character and how powerful that was. I just. I'm not that knowledgeable about movies, if you know what I mean, but it just captured me so, what that communicated. I thought that was brilliant.
Thanks. You mean in Poland in the bar with?
Yeah, and even before that, there were just scenes where you just see the character looking. You don't know what they're looking at yet, and you just see it, and it's just so captivating.
Thank you. I love that.
I think that this is all we have time. Oh, no, last one. Okay, promise.
Thank you so much. It was an extraordinary film.
Thank you.
And I'm just wondering, you obviously started making it a long time ago. The climate today is different from what it was then. And this film says certain things. I just wondered if you thought there would be some kind of reaction given today's climate with what's going on.
I mean, I thought there'd be more boycotts. I thought there'd be more. There was sort of none. I think. I don't know. I mean, it's been an amazing experience getting to show it, because you never know, how it's going to go when you go to the theaters. But
The reviews are great.
yeah, I mean, it was.
The responses, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of all you can really ask for with the thing. But yeah, I mean, I expected, I think, slightly more something in that realm. Right, and it's a little movie. I think maybe it's just maybe they don't sort of enough people
I
know
think
about it in that way, and hopefully people will find it. I mean, there's the thing from here, yeah, but you
I
get
do
to see.
think the complexity of the film and the granular and the articulate, I think it just doesn't lend itself to be boycotted in
Yeah.
a or
I'd like to think so, but I know that often that's not quite the way it sort of goes. But then, we didn't have that. But getting to show it here, and this is such a great cinema, and the sound and picture. I mean, you guys have the best place. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a good place
Thank
to
you,
end it.
Jay. Thank you
Please,
so
thank you,
much.
Julia. This was great.